Walk into any bridal boutique today, and you are immediately surrounded by a sea of white silk, satin, and lace. We tend to view this uniform color palette as an ancient, almost sacred tradition, a timeless symbol of a bride's purity and maidenhood. But that unbroken lineage is an illusion. The white wedding dress is a relatively modern trend. The ultimate standard of bridal innocence is the result of a highly successful historical marketing campaign. Before the mid-1800s, buying a dress meant strictly for one day was an absurd concept for most people. A bride simply wore the absolute best dress she already owned, regardless of its color. Look at this historic gold brocade gown. If a family had money, they signaled it by dressing the bride in rich, heavy fabrics in colors like gold, deep red, or burgundy. They wanted a garment durable enough to be worn again to other formal events. This religious painting shows the Virgin Mary wrapped in her traditional blue cloak. For centuries, if a Western bride specifically wanted her outfit to communicate religious devotion and purity, blue was the standard color of choice. White, on the other hand, was the official color of mourning in several European royal courts. So if white was impractical, rarely worn for celebrations, and completely unattached to the concept of virginity, how did it become the inescapable uniform for brides everywhere? On February 10, 1840, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert. Instead of the traditional crimson velvet robes, she opted for a simple white silk satin dress. This antique mechanical floor loom represents a major economic threat at the time. The Industrial Revolution was flooding Britain with cheap, machine-made textiles, driving the domestic, handmade lace industry toward collapse. Victoria didn't choose white for its moral symbolism. She chose it because a bright, neutral satin background was the best way to highlight the complex relief patterns of this handmade British Honiton lace she was trying to save. She left her jeweled crown behind, securing her veil with a simple wreath of orange blossoms, to present herself to the public as a supportive wife rather than a ruling monarch. By wearing domestic materials head to toe, she turned her wedding into a heavily publicized advertisement for British textile workers. The look caught on immediately among the elite, but they didn't adopt it out of modesty. They loved it as a display of extreme wealth. This chart compares the high maintenance costs and single-use nature of white silk against the durability of traditional colored fabrics. In the soot-filled, muddy reality of the 19th century, a white dress was nearly impossible to keep clean. Buying one proved her family was rich enough to afford a luxury garment that would likely be ruined after a single use. This is the cover of Godey's Lady's Book, one of the most influential mass media magazines of the era. By the late 1840s, publications like this began pushing the white dress down to the aspirational middle class. To make such an impractical purchase acceptable, the magazines invented a new meaning. They printed dubious claims that, since the earliest ages, white had always been the universal emblem of a girl's innocence and unsullied heart. They took a raw marker of financial privilege and spun it into a moral requirement for any respectable bride. Through sheer editorial repetition, a savvy economic flex was permanently rewritten into a measure of a woman's virtue. This is Princess Diana in her voluminous 1981 gown. Booming 20th century prosperity and the heavy influence of Hollywood films eventually exported this specific Western aesthetic across the globe. In this image, we see a traditional Chinese bridal quinqua in vivid red and gold. Throughout many Eastern cultures, red is the color of luck, prosperity, and joy, while white has historically been reserved for funerals. Here is a Japanese bride in a white shiramoku kimono, while Shinto traditions have a distinct history with white bridal wear. Many modern brides in Asia bridge these worlds by wearing cultural colors for the ceremony and a Western-style white dress for the reception. The white gown conquered the global bridal market through the force of Western industrial and media dominance, overriding centuries of localized color traditions. Today, the rigid rules of Victorian morality have largely faded. When a bride chooses white now, she is usually reaching for a timeless aesthetic or a classic silhouette, rather than declaring her moral status. The white wedding dress is a historical construct. It was born out of an urgent need to save lace weavers, elevated by wealthy elites showing off their fortunes, and cemented by magazine editors selling a fantasy. But because this tradition was entirely invented to serve a specific purpose, modern brides are completely free to write their own rules, wearing whatever color or style holds the most meaning for them.